friends. I'm your host, Dr. Elizabeth Ssemanda, the intuitive psychiatrist, and you are listening to Stepping into Soul Power. Friends, we're getting into holiday season. And there's a lot to do. There's a lot to do. And some of us are givers. Some of us are caregivers, and we are giving and giving and giving. There's so many of us who are taught that love means giving, saying yes, showing up, holding space for everybody else. But what if that habit keeps us depleted, anxious, disconnected from our truth? And so today, in today's podcast, what we're going to explore is how can we support other people, others, without abandoning ourselves. This is so important for the holiday season. And our next guest is a psychotherapist. She's a Yale clinical instructor. She's helped thousands of people who are high achieving individuals move past the anxiety, perfectionism, and self-doubt and really start aligning with their inner truth. She's got an upcoming book, Serial Fixer, and is here to really help you reclaim your truth, boundaries, release over responsibility, and let go of what's not serving you. Leah Marone, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for our conversation today.
Yeah, so I would love to hear a little bit about what got you started on this path. How did you decide that you were going to help others move from overgiving um, to a space of really listening to themselves and honoring
Yes.
their truth?
Yes. I mean, I think it was just something that I was consistently seeing across all boards, right? Like I was seeing in my private practice, I was seeing when I would help educators or CEOs or just people in very compassion driven fields. And I was just seeing this kind of, we could talk and regurgitate all the things associated with burnout, like just say no and just, have certain structure with your day and just turn off the computer and all these things. And they sound wonderful, in the moment when we're logically thinking about them. But when it's our turn to execute these boundaries and say no or to take care of ourselves, it's very challenging. And so I was constantly wondering, we have all this information, especially in the last several years, about compassion fatigue and burnout and boundaries, which is amazing. But what is it really at a deeper level, a psychological level, and with our internal conflicts that's preventing us, from recovering and setting these boundaries and getting caught in this cyclical exhaustion?
Can you speak a little bit to that? What is it specifically that makes it so tough to break the cycle?
Yeah. Well, I think you started to allude to it, which was wonderful because I think so many of us from a very young age, we start to build these strong associations and, kind of overextending, always being there, always creating space, caregiving, caring, solving, fixing. We equate that with love, right? And rightfully so. But then we would kind of miss having ourselves in the equation. And so it was almost depending on how we were raised, and a lot of times we had to fill these roles that we had to be 3 steps ahead. If we soothe everyone else, then ultimately we'll soothe ourselves. And so you can see where that kind of kickstarts us oftentimes into this role that takes a lot of emotional intelligence to always be, again, steps ahead. How can I fix and solve and soothe so that I'm okay? And it really does perpetuate this overextension, this exhaustion when we're constantly putting ourselves in the roles of the fixer and the solver.
For people who, see that pattern and and are ready to break free from that pattern, can you give us like a step by step of like, okay, how can we break free? We don't want to do this anymore. We see the madness. How
Mhm.
can we start to move um, towards a place where we're no longer fixing everyone else's problems, but there's more compassion for ourselves?
Right. And really, it's not about not continuing to lead with that compassion and that empathy. We don't want to get rid of that. Those are like strengths, right? It really is kind of, again, I think first and foremost, collecting your data. So it's really start to recognize when you're interacting with your child, when you're interacting with your partner or a coworker, and they share something that might be distressing to them, they share something that's challenging, and just creating some negative or hard emotions. If your first like step in hearing that is to immediately start to give advice, immediately start to say, "Well, just do this," or "Yeah, my friend went through this 3 years ago. This is what she did." So you immediately go into fixer and solver mode.
Mhm.
You're occupying that role, and you again are not meeting the person and the situation where it currently is. And you can see that that's actually robbing that individual, whether they're 15 years old or 45 years old, from getting some of their own processing skills and repetitions in to build some of their own self connection and self confidence. And so you can see that, the biggest thing is to first start to notice. Yes, I immediately start to give advice. I immediately want this person to not feel these hard things anymore so that I feel that sense of purpose. I feel like I'm useful and they can be okay so I can be okay. And I think the first step after you've started to realize this is to begin with validation. Begin when somebody shares something that might be hard for you to hear, and you can clearly see that it's hard for them to say because they're experiencing this discomfort, is to first just say, you know what? I'm going to support, don't solve. I'm going to validate this person and create this space and let them keep ownership of what they're feeling while I lead with empathy and validate and let them know that I'm doing my best to decode the message that they're sharing with me verbally or non-verbally. And that right there, it's a collaboration. You're not over, kind of taking the bait, or you're not overextending, or you're not taking false ownership. And that right there is the very first step, and it takes practice.
I love that. Okay, so you there are just so many good things about that that I wanna talk about. So noticing, being self-aware about what you're doing, step 1, great, great, great. Validating, and what you're really talking about, or it sounds like you're learning to hold space.
Yes. Yes. And this is the thing. You're not going to perfectly execute this every time. That's not the goal. It's not all or nothing. It's like getting out of that rigid thinking. But it's almost like if you envision the person having a tangled, messy ball of yarn, right? And if you are constantly letting other people throw you their tangled mess for you to unravel, like that's the problem. And so it's really allowing people to keep ownership of their tangled ball of yarn, and you might be there to pull at little threads here and there to help and support and empower. But your job is not to carry everyone's tangled mess around, because you can see that then you don't have time for your own. And it
Mm.
reiterates this kind of self fulfilling prophecy. And also, it's very egocentric where we think, well, I'm doing everything externally. I'm purposeful. I'm useful. I'm solving things. People come to me. I'm needed. But you can see that that almost checks this box and distracts us from really the work internally that we need to do in conjunction with showing up for the people that we love and support.
It's very true. It is, it can be, you said the word, it's a distraction.
Hmm.
And that is such an important truth to to realize that you're so busy solving everyone else's problems that like, hey, what about what's
Hmm.
going on in here? What's
Hmm.
what's going on in here? And the other thing I love that you said is that you're giving other people the opportunity to step up to the plate. And
Yes.
um, it seems it feels like the feel I'm getting is it's like a little bit of a paradigm shift that needs to happen.
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it. And it does. I mean, these things, it's just like when we're getting in physical shape, we need repetition, we need consistency. We're building muscle, right? We're building stamina. And think about too, as you're entering kind of and taking this shift and, like working on a reframe, looking or working on just different roles that you're occupying in relationships, that takes practice, that takes reps. that takes, again, data collection and you experimenting and trying things. And that right there is really boundary setting, but in a healthy way. You're noticing that this is not working. I am working so hard to be there for everyone, every which way. I even, when I hear distress, when I hear a sigh from the other room from my child, I immediately like try to be 5 steps ahead to prevent that discomfort. I'm taking the bait constantly. Whereas if I would just start by meeting the person and the situation where they're at and letting them sometimes even work through some things while they know that I am there to comfort and support, it's such a recipe for internal peace that's still
Mm.
feeling that deep connection, and you're leaving room for you too, right? It's not this state of urgency all the time.
I love that. I love that because I think sometimes what happens, especially when you're in a family, there might be certain dynamics that are going on. I guess for family members who are used, who might, I feel like there's some people who might interpret you not coming in as a certain type of, mm.
Mhm.
Like, how do people start to have that conversation, um, so that things go a little more smooth?
Yes, it is. And again, like, great point that when you're starting to shift a little bit, when you're maybe noticing or working on a reframe, people around you that are used to you, maybe always jumping in and structuring everything for them and being 5 steps ahead, they might be like, what the hell's happening? Where's this shift? Like, where's mom? Or where's this person? Or where's my boss? All these things. And so it is sometimes having that discussion, especially, I mean, you can even do this with your children and your teenagers if they start to share something and your typical response is, well, I'll just call the teacher. Well, we'll figure it out. Well, just don't worry about it. And you're trying to like quickly get through that to check it off and convince yourself too, like, see, I'm a good mom, or see, I'm a good parent because I did this and my kid's okay and we fixed it. But rather coming, sometimes to that interaction and validating. If you hear that sigh, if you hear, oh, I hate school or I'm so stressed, it's sometimes just even starting with like, no, you have had a busy week, and validating, kind of paraphrasing, meeting that person where they're at. See what your child or your teen says after. They may start to go into looking at options. They may start doing that. They may want to vent for a few minutes, but refraining from going in and trying to fix and solve and button it all up. And sometimes even sharing. I know I've had to do this with my teenagers.
Mm.
I've said, several times, like, you know what? I don't think I've given you the benefit of the doubt here. I think sometimes I jump in, and I'm sorry if that communicates to you that I don't necessarily trust that you're resourceful enough or that you
Mm.
can handle it. And that right there, I think is so empowering for them. And it's so good for me to hear because when I
I
can't, yeah, right?
I love that validating to nail it, really getting in there and being like, yeah, validating their experience, but then also sharing exactly what you're thinking.
Hmm. Yeah. And it's hard. And I mean, I'm thinking too with my own teens, sometimes it is hard. And sometimes I'll even try to hear, I'll hear myself saying, like, no, this is a really tough thing to feel. Like, I wish that we had this quick answer right now. And sometimes just that, is so helpful, and it doesn't make it all go away. It doesn't nip it, and cleanly put a ribbon on it and just be like, don't worry about it. Just go, move on. Tomorrow's a new day. Our teens are like, oh, they don't like that. They get frustrated when they hear the parent
Yeah.
jump in and start like, oh, we'll just do this and this and this. Or when I was 17, this is what I did. And so it really is like coming from that place of compassion, keeping the ownership, the tangled ball of yarn with them, but maybe pulling on a few threads and letting them know through your like just refraining from jumping in to fix and solve that you trust that they're going to get through this and that you are there with them.
Yes. Yes. Oh, so powerful. The other, the other thing that came to mind is I think that sometimes emotions can get really intense. Like like someone is really feeling that anger. Somebody's really in the depths of despair. And um, like when that's going on and you're like, oh, it's you're trying to hold space. Are there specific techniques, practices that you feel can be incredibly helpful when things are like on a 10?
Yes. Ooh, and that happens a lot, doesn't it? And if we kinda go
Yeah.
back and recycle that scenario with
These
our children.
kids.
Yes, that can
Yes.
happen a lot. And so again, try it's so hard, but trying, a lot of times, not just our teenagers or our children, but sometimes people will almost like project it onto us, right? And they almost like want us to battle it out with them and meet their emotion where it is for them to have a distraction of what's going on internally. It's like, well, if you and I can get in a battle, that'll give me this distraction externally from what I'm really feeling and not even sure where to start internally. So it's really, when someone is venting, someone is really getting into the weeds of how they're feeling. I do think sometimes that pause, sometimes that head nod, sometimes just even saying, like, paraphrasing, it's not drilling them with questions because that can ignite them further, but it's just kind of, your children, your teens, the people that are closest to you. It's sometimes even asking when you're like, I don't know what the hell to do. It's just sometimes even saying, like, it seems like it's helpful for you to get this out, or like, what would be the best thing that I can help you with right now? They might not be there yet, but even asking those questions,
Mm,
you're helping them identify what they may need in the midst and in the depths of all this emotional, turmoil. It's inserting a bit of logic. Like, what would be most helpful now? Do you feel like you need a minute with this? Can I check back in on you later? Like, some of those things where it's not in your mind, like it's control, it's trying to, kind of mask the discomfort you feel. It's like, that's theirs. This is excruciating for me to watch. I wish this wasn't the case, but like, they need to feel this and they need to come out of it. That's how we build resilience as humans.
mm. I love that. Very something very it's incredibly simple. I mean, it can be a tough situation, but really getting at the heart of, okay, what do you need?
Mhm, mhm.
What do you need? And then working with whatever they say to help resolve that. I I wonder that this specific group of people, the overgivers, are you've worked with lots of them. Are there specific things that you feel like this group needs as they're
Mm.
navigating this change?
Oh, yeah. I mean, again, think about too how, you might even be listening to this and thinking, like, yes, I do need to set more boundaries, or yes, I do need to say no, or I do need to stop maybe taking the bait. You're thinking through a different filter right now, if you will. And again, when it's time to execute that, we have these internal protective parts of us, almost like our internal bodyguards that creep up and be like, ooh, well, if you don't do that for this person, then you're probably not a good friend. If you don't take that on for somebody, then people are going to think that you're selfish.
Mm,
And these very rigid, strong associations and these protective parts of us, like the inner pleaser in us, the inner critic
yeah.
in us, they pop up and they challenge sometimes this logic we had 2 days ago or 2 hours ago. And you can see where sometimes we're overridden with guilt. We're overridden with, like, well, if I do that, I'm probably selfish. Or, oh, if I don't handle all of this for my family, then I'm probably not a good wife. I'm probably not a good mother. And you can see, just hearing that, the rigidity, but that's what goes on a lot internally. And so it's really understanding these conflicts that rise within us, where one part of us might really be working hard to try to protect our peace, but another part is really trying to protect potential judgment from others, disconnection, not or being labeled by something that is negative, like you're selfish or you're not there or you're not a good enough this. And so I really would challenge, everyone to generate, it's hard work, but get those repetitions with looking inward.
Yeah.
And when things pop up and there's that internal struggle, to think, what are these parts of me trying to protect me from? It's
Mm,
like, this part of me giving me 10 bodyguards when I only need one.
mm.
What if I started to make these little efforts and almost experiment with myself to try to convince these protective parts, these bodyguards, that nothing catastrophic actually happened? And that, again, is getting an emotional shape and building that internal resilience and convincing those parts of us that it's not all or nothing, that we're not going to be completely, chastised or, experience these heinous things if we start to insert ourselves into the equation.
Oh, wow. It's so powerful. Really getting at confronting, it's like some hard hard truths, hard truths, really getting at the heart of what are you there's fear there, like, what are you trying to protect yourself from? For
Mhm.
people, I think that it can be challenging to go up against these paths, and I think, the feel that I'm getting is that there are definitely some people who are gonna need to do this through therapy, like, therapy is gonna be incredibly helpful.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. And it is. This is a huge reframe for a lot of us. And, I think I mentioned this before, but the biggest thing for me was when someone would sigh in my house. Like I'd hear the deep, oh, and that for me as a mother, as a wife, it would kick me into serial fixing. Like I would be like, oh my gosh, somebody's in distress, somebody's not happy, something's going on. And I could just feel myself trying to fix and solve before I even knew the context. I
Mm,
kinda made it about me, right? Like, what am I not doing? Oh, was dinner not this, and trying to go through and internalize everything to fill in these gaps. And just maybe some of you hearing that can relate, but also think like, "Oh my god, that sounds exhausting." And it was. And so it's thinking about where these triggers lie, where these things happen. And a lot of it we can trace back to our childhood. We can trace back to the roles that we were pushed into or occupied within our family dynamics. And there is hope to kind of gain more insight and start to experiment and sometimes break some of these patterns while again still leading with that empathy and that compassion, but building true connections with others and yourself, because I've found that the biggest indicator is when you feel stuck, when you feel resentful and you're like, I am in all these imbalanced relationships where I'm craving depth, I'm craving this, I'm working so hard to make sure all these things are done and people can feel this way so I can be okay. And that right there, if we tweak that formula a bit, it's amazing how you start to clear out some space and get inner peace and also empower the people around you.
yes. Yes. It there's so many wonderful things about making that shift. The it it's self-empowerment, but, like, also it can change the whole dynamic of your family, your community, if you're able to make that shift. I did wanna ask about, because you said a word, guilt, and that's something that it rings true for a lot of caregivers, like, and it can be so difficult to let go of the guilt.
Mhm.
Um, so are there things that can ease that process? Because sometimes it's not as easy as just being like, "I'm not gonna do this."
That's right. It again is like you're absolutely right. Like a lot of times we look at it again as all or nothing, as black or white, and it would invite you to find the gray. So there's a part of you that might be like, I need to say no to all this stuff. Like I can't do anything. I'm exhausted, and it's very extreme over here. And the other side of you is like, I'm ridden with guilt if I do anything for myself and I'm not available and I don't pick up the phone every time this person calls and I don't do an X, Y, and Z. And so you can see that those are very different parts of you that are trying to protect and are motivated by very different things. And
Mm,
so think of yourself as kind of the internal mediator with these parts of you that are very conflictual in what they're trying to protect you from. And so it's finding that gray zone. And that's where, again, you start to play, just experiment with little subtle shifts. Where if somebody is calling you nonstop and needing something all the time, and you think, I have to be available because if I'm not, I'm not a good daughter, or I'm not a good wife, or I'm not a good mom. Like that's the association that we're trying to tweak. And that's when, we can start to make these little adjustments and little experiments where it's like, you know what? This friend calls me every night after 10 p.m. And I've told her repeatedly, like, hey, I'm probably going to bed at this time because I got to be up at 5 with my kid. And so they're bulldozing through your boundary.
mm,
And it's thinking about reiterating that and sharing and saying, you know what? I don't know if I'll be available. And that our inner pleaser perks right up and we're like, oh my God, then we're not a good friend. What if something happens? It's all our fault. But that's where we make these little adjustments and experiments and think, I'm going to text her before I go to bed and say, hey, I'm headed to bed. I'd love to talk to you in the morning. And that's where again you collect the data with, did something catastrophic happen? Am I still a good friend? Are we still talking? Like those are the things that we need to start doing and finding the gray zone and not thinking in extremes. But these little experiments help build that inner trust and soothe those protective parts of us.
It's great, like, it's a work in progress, like,
Hmm.
every day taking steps,
Hmm.
every day learning. I guess, um, there's a lesson. I feel there's a lot of people on this, that listen are, really interested in being true to themselves, really connecting with their soul. And I wonder whether, like, in your opinion, is there a spiritual lesson, a soul lesson, that is to be learned with this history of over moving from overgiving to something that's a little more balanced?
Yeah. Oh, I think there's a lot of depth and a lot of connections there. And it is, I mean, sometimes I think solving and fixing and sometimes how we view compassion is just sometimes control in disguise, right? It's almost
Ooh.
like, yeah, it's like this kind of, it's this need to kind of control or to fix and to solve, to alleviate, fuel our sense of purpose and connection and worthiness
Mhm.
externally. And if you, as you can see, like that leaves us again kind of left empty. And our soul, I mean, has not been nourished consistently. And I think that that's a huge thing is really understanding when you're leading or trying to lead with that compassion, is it actually kind of to soothe your discomfort? Is it
Ooh.
actually trying to confirm something for yourself that you're doing it right, or you're a good this, or you're worthy? And I think that too, there's some internal turmoil, and the soul is probably screaming at you for some recalibration.
Ooh. Important truths. Important truths. Um, what I love about your book is it speaks to this global is empowerment by letting other people step into their soul power and, releasing that control. Empowerment, is all over the place. And I wonder, for yourself, you've written the book, what's the main lesson you'd love for people that read the book or listeners here to take home?
I think the biggest thing is, and hopefully something that sticks and you can add your own flavor to it, is just like how like support don't solve. How can I support and not solve?
Mm,
And I think that again, you will make that and insert that depending on where you're at in life and your relationships and the chapter that you're navigating. But I do think that that right there is such a wonderful approach when you're combating consistent burnout, cyclical exhaustion, overextension, serial fixing, and compassion fatigue. Like, how can I be that supporter and lead with the amazing gifts that I have, compassion, empathy, emotional intelligence? But again, let people keep their tangled ball of yarn while I'm there to
mm.
help them unravel it, but not do it for them.
Perfect, perfect. So can you be very clear about, okay, what are the behaviors that is what support? What does that look like?
Yeah, support is, meeting the person, the situation where they're at, asking questions that really help them work through what's going on. If you have great advice that you want to share, do it. But maybe you start it by saying, like, what would it look like if this?
Mm,
Or how would you do this? Or what do you feel like your next step might be? You may know very well exactly what the playbook looks like. And you probably have certain friends or people in your life that you've given the same advice to week after week. And there's this frustration and like, why are they nodding their head and saying that makes sense when we talk? And then there's no execution. It's because they don't have ownership. They have not added their own flavor to it. And so it's again like being patient and refraining and emotionally regulating yourself because not everyone is on the same timetable as you. And that's so hard as a human.
yes. Yeah, not everyone is on the same timetable. You gotta be I love the words that you use, patience. Be patient, let them go through the process
Mhm.
and regulate yourself. But you can be there. Um,
Absolutely.
you can be there. Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. So tell me, because I know people are gonna wanna get in contact with you. I know people are gonna wanna read this book. How can people connect with you?
Oh, I'd love to connect with you all. My website is leahmarone.com. You can find me on most social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all the things. And you can buy the book pretty much anywhere where you like to buy books. So, I mean, it's on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop. It might be in your local bookstore. If not, you can put in a plug for me if you want. But I really do. I hope that it's a helpful resource, and I'd love to hear from you. I also on Substack do a whole segment on different types of serial fixing, and I have people write into me and share how they're a serial fixer. And it's not a bad thing. It's just something again we need to tweak and like reframe, and you're not alone. So that's another outlet too to kind of keep this conversation going.
Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely. Thank you so much. You have helped us be discerning about, hey, truly carrying what's ours to carry and letting go in a loving way of what's not. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
If you haven't heard it yet today, I appreciate you. The soul in me honors the soul in you. If you'd like to see more episodes like this, please subscribe or click here. And friends, if this spoke to you, leave a comment below. We would love to hear from you.